think it's really encouraging when people do come out to meetings like this and take the time and effort to come and listen to people like myself and others talk. I mean, it's a hot night, there's football on the telly, you know, and I've still got 50 people, maybe 60 people in this room. And these events have been replicated right throughout the country. And that's really, really encouraging, because where we are in the Yes campaign, this is a real grassroots movement. And that's how we're going to win this referendum. Let me tell you a bit about Business for Scotland. I was going to read to you, I don't like reading to you, but if I was going to read to you something that's going to, I've just written from the Sunday Times and doing their blog. Now, we're not a lot of Sunday Times supporters, let's just get that for sure. But the good thing is they allow us to publish stuff on their website. But what I think I'll just do is tell you a wee bit of history about Business for Scotland. Business for Scotland is an apolitical business networking independent supporting group. It has 2,200 members, and we've been on the go about 18 months. We've raised over £300,000 for the campaign, and we have on site another £150,000 to raise before the 16th of September. Under the electoral rules, we're allowed to spend £150,000 during the regulated period of the campaign. And we have dedicated ourselves to make sure we spend every penny of that on campaigning. Not on salaries, not on fancy offices, which we do have. We've raised the money to pay for them, but on campaigning. Business for Scotland is made up of all sorts of people. People like myself who employ over 1,000 people. We've got a few other board directors who employ over 1,000 people, down to the one-man band, the hairdressers, the mechanics, the dentists, other business people. 99% of the businesses in Scotland are small, medium enterprises. They're not big companies. So when I read in the paper about Standard Life or a Greco or any of these big corporate companies, big global companies, it doesn't worry me that they're making statements. Because the chairman of these companies have one vote. One vote, the same as the wee man that runs his own little shop or runs his own little pub or whatever it may be. But what we have done is we've tried to look at the economic arguments. Now, like John said, it seems to be that this whole debate is centred on the economy and the economic arguments. And a lot of it is above, and it's no disgrace, it's above a lot of people's heads. Because they don't know what GDP is. They're not interested in per capita output. They're not interested. What they're interested in is what does it mean to them. And what we've got to try and do is debunk some of the myths and uncertainties that are getting peddled our way. I see independence, and I've been a nationalist and independence supporter since I was that high, which wasn't probably that much. And somebody said to me, why do you support independence? I was brought up in Broughty Ferry in Dundee in the 70s. And what happened then was that the house next door to us, we used to get a lot of Canadians and Americans come there to work in the oil industry. And I was quite interested in the current affairs and the papers and all that. I used to read it. And I used to read the oil was going to run out at the end of the 80s. So I remember saying to my dad was an ordinary guy, worked as a site agent on a building site. And I said, Dad, I didn't really get this. All these Americans, all this money getting invested, and we're getting told it's going to run out at the end of the 80s. And he said one thing, he said, they're lying to us. And they have been lying to us. They've been continually lying to us for the last 40 years, 50 years now. And what we've got to understand that this is a business opportunity of a lifetime. This is an opportunity for the whole of Scotland. And as a business person, we're in business to make money. No, it's not fool anything. We're in business to make money. But what we see in Business for Scotland, and a lot of my colleagues in Business for Scotland, what we see is the opportunity to lift the whole country, to have opportunity for everybody in the country, to lift the living standards of everybody in the country. It's not about pulling people down, it's about taking people up, raising people's ambitions and aspirations. So we see this independence, we see this whole debate as being healthy for the nation. I think it's healthy that we can have a conversation like this. We're going into a referendum not because of the bullet, because of democracy. We've had ridiculous statements come out over the last 18 months, and one of the most ridiculous ones recently was Obama. The leader of the free and independent nations of the world, who gained independence from the UK back in 200 odd years ago, and wants us to stick together. We're not okay in the UK. We have a major problem. We have to rebalance the economy by geography and sector. Now what do I mean by that? London is a wonderful city. I love London, I love leaving London. It's a powerhouse, it's an economic powerhouse, but it's a suction machine on the rest of the UK economy. Vince Cable, the UK Minister, has already said this. It's sucking the life out of the country. We've went from a manufacturing nation to one that is involved in financial casino economics. And we need to move away from that. And we need to get back to an economy that's vibrant, that has well-paid, secure jobs for everyone. Now, a couple of things that John said that are really interesting. Crossrail, £10 billion. £10 billion for Crossrail. £1 billion for the trains to go on Crossrail. Who's going to benefit from that? The economy of Scotland's not going to benefit from that. HS2, it's all the UK government have already came out and said, that HS2 will damage regions of Scotland. Their own report. I think Tayside is damaged to something like £300,000. HS2, last estimate, £44 billion. Now, is HS2 really, is it really a route to get people from London to Birmingham quicker? Or is it actually an extension of the commuter belt from London to allow people to commute into London to work? The southeast of England is sucking the country dry. It's sucking Scotland dry. We used to be told, you're too wee, you're too stupid, you can't afford it, you're subsidy junkies. Didn't hear that anymore, do we? You never hear people saying we're subsidy junkies anymore. Because what they realise that they need the benefit of the Scottish economy to prop up the rest of the UK. You take oil out of the Scottish economy, our output per person, what we output, is the same as the rest of the UK. The exact same. The statistics are all there. John said that there's loads of information out there. If you really want to look at figures, GERS, I worked that down here, I said that much, but research it, whatever. But the Government Expenditure Revenue Scotland has all the figures in it. If you've got the time, go in there and you'll see the figures of what we do. So let's not be fooled by what the uncertainty that the No campaign must peddle uncertainty. They must peddle. It's the only thing they've got. Where on the yes side, we can look at the future and put out a vision for what Scotland can be. This is a choice of two futures. And this is so important. It's the biggest decision we'll ever make. And I'd rather go out and preach, for want of a better word, to undecided voters and no voters, as well as our own people or yes voters. So I think it's very important we'll have this conversation, because it's a huge decision we'll have in front of us. What we have at Business for Scotland is 2,200 members in 18 months. I mean, that's phenomenal. We've knocked the CBI, I don't know if you followed that, CBI, we've knocked them into touch, because they were a political propaganda group, funded by public money. So what we've got to understand is that some of the arguments that we've been given over the last 18 months by the No campaign and uncertainty, it's the only thing they've got. So what we have to do is lay out that positive future for Scotland. But what we can do now, and what we must do now, is also what is our fears if we remain the same, if we don't vote yes. I know what my fears are, because nothing's going to change. Nothing's going to change. We've had oil revenues for 40 years, and it's been wasted. We're told now that we can't afford it. How can you afford to be independent? Now, I've just told you that our output, our GDP output per head, without oil, is the same as the rest of the UK. So that means to me that oil must be a bonus. Oil is a bonus. So how can we be told that we cannot afford to be independent? We'd be the only nation in the world that's going to struggle because we've got oil. It's a burden. It's a burden to us. We have at least 40 to 50 years oil left in the North Sea. We haven't even explored the west coast, the Atlantic field. We can't get in the Clyde. They reckon there's oil reserves between Ireland and Scotland. They reckon there's huge oil reserves there. The reason we can't explore there, they've done the surveys, but the reason we can't get in and do any real exploration is because of the nuclear weapons on Lincoln Clyde. So the sooner we get rid of the nuclear weapons, the sooner we can get into it. We are a wealthy nation. Scotland is the 14th richest world in the OECD countries. The 14th richest nation in OECD countries. The 14th. We're a wealthy nation, but what we're not is a wealthy society. That's why independence is so important. So let me be quite clear. Oil is a bonus, and we have 40 years of it left, just from the North Sea. There's only 2 nations in the world that do have oil and don't have a sovereign wealth fund. Us, the UK, and Iraq. As you all know, Norway set the sovereign wealth fund. Norway's a hugely, hugely wealthy nation. But with no disrespect to Norwegians, back in the early 70s, it was a small fishing place. It didn't have the wealth. But they've been wise with their money. So we can either vote, if you vote no, we'll get the same as we've always had, we'll waste the money, we'll waste the oil revenues, and nothing will change. This referendum has dragged the unionist parties into the gutter as far as I'm concerned. It's dragged the unionist parties to promise us extra powers. If we didn't have this referendum, we would have got none of these extra powers. Labour were in power for 13 years. 13 years and gave us nothing. So there are no guarantees if we vote no that we will get these extra powers. What we might have is 25 billion more of austerity from the Tories. What we might have if we vote the Tories in is a yes-no referendum. And I tell you, UKIP has punched a hole in their vote. That European election is not a fluke. 30% of the vote down south was for UKIP. They were the polled the highest out of all the parties. That's not a blip. That's a major, major problem. Now, I went down to London to do a debate and had the pleasure of Alistair Carmichael and Margaret Curran on one side, himself and Angus Roxon on the other side. And I was amazed at how naive the people of London are, because they're fed what they get in the English media, and most of it, the Daily Mail, the Telegraph, it's right wing, and it feeds them nonsense. So 400 people, expats, didn't really have a clue what was going on. But I did share some of their fears. That if I lived in the southeast of England, and immigration is going to go up by 2 million in the next 7 years, perhaps I'd want to have a different immigration policy than we need in Scotland, we want in Scotland. It's important that we have control of all the economic levers, that we have control of both sides of the balance sheet, and we can only do that through independence. Now let's look at some of the things that would help business in Scotland. Air passenger duty, a tax when you travel by air. In the white paper, they're committed to reduce it by 50%, and then hopefully abolish it. That is stopping connectivity with the rest of the world. To be a world economic power, to compete in the world, we need to be able to commute and fly and to get to places and not have to go through Heathrow. Air passenger duties for the whole of UK. All you would have to do to replace the revenue that's generated from that is put between 1 and 2p on every journey that's taken in London, whether that be on the tube, the bus, and then if you include the Eurostar, you're actually in profit, you're actually making more money. So we're being penalised from that one policy is affecting the whole of the Scottish economy. If you take the Chief Executive of Edinburgh Airport, he's on public record saying it's damaging his airport, damaging his business, air passenger duty. And he cannot compete globally and particularly internationally with some of the European airports like Schiphol in Amsterdam and Frankfurt and obviously Heathrow. So there are a number of things. We talk about taxation. Within the white paper, our taxation system is so complicated. As a business person, it is so complicated and it is so difficult to collect and it's so cumbersome. By just adopting a simplified taxation system, looking around the world and see what other countries do better, because you know what, there are countries do things better than we do at the moment. But if you go and look at the taxation system, we'll save £250 million just by having a simplified taxation system. Nuclear weapons. By getting rid of nuclear weapons, we save hundreds of millions of pounds. And all this could be invested back in the infrastructure of Scotland and to help us get back to a country with a balanced economy that manufactures, that retains its talent, that does not export its talent, that builds on the great universities that we have, that builds on the bioscience that's going on, that builds on the gaming industry, and starts making things, starts manufacturing things. And let's get back to being our own nation. So independence is really a life choice for us, but it's a nation choice for everybody else that comes after us. So I'd encourage you to get out, and you know, one of the things, I was at a board meeting at Business Club today in Glasgow, that we have about 10 weeks left to go. It is so important that if you feel inclined to get out and help with the Yes campaign out on the ground. Because with the air war, which is the media and the newspaper, we're not going to win that. We have very few friends. The Sunday Herald's the only paper that's came out in favour. We reckon there'll be 2 more before the referendum. We know that the broadcast media we have a problem. We definitely have a problem with things like the BBC. There is a bias. And that's not being paranoid, that is fact. So the way to win this is by having meetings like this, and for people like ourselves to get out there and have the conversation. Have the conversation with people. We know when we talk to undecided people, and people that are maybe a bit no, we know when we have the conversation, we move them. We move them to either a yes, or at least we negate them to the middle ground. We put the uncertainty in them. So it's so important that we rally around and we get out there, and particularly the weeks prior to the referendum, and all help each other to try and get a yes vote for Scotland. And the best thing about these events is the questions. So please don't be afraid to ask questions at the end of it. Thank you.